Welcome to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. Today is Tuesday, June 3rd, day 606 of the war. Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our New York reporter, Luke Tress. Luke, thank you so much for joining me this very early morning in Israel and very late night in New York.
Yep, good to be here.
12 people were wounded in Boulder, Colorado on Sunday, and one person at least is in critical condition after an Egyptian national, Mohammed Soliman, attacked a pro-Israel, pro-hostages event. We will hear about the event, his means of attacking, and we'll also learn more about what the Jewish community is doing as a whole in order to ward off future anti-Semitic violence. All of this and more when we're back.
The law basically assumes that the enemy force you are fighting may not care about your civilians, but it certainly cares about its own civilians. What do we do in a reality where you're dealing with an enemy that the suffering of their civilian population is inherent to their war strategy? Now, that doesn't absolve us of our obligations. Hamas's inhumanity does not absolve us of the obligation for humanity. But the context that it creates, I think, is critical to the conversation, and it's very lacking.
I agree, but when democracies fight back against terror groups, they have to fight on two fronts. They have to both fight on the terms that have been laid out by the terror group, and the second thing you have to fight back is by preserving the norms of a democracy. We're forced to ask these moral questions about what we are and what we do, but based on an enemy that is not playing by the rules. But that's what we decide to be a part of by being the family of nations. And as Jews, we say, like every morning in our prayers, we say, Anachnu Amcha b'nei britecha, we choose to be the people of God's covenant, meaning we tie ourselves to an aspiration of justice and righteousness.
I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with Luke Tress from New York. 3 Israeli soldiers were killed and 2 were wounded by an explosive device during operations in northern Gaza's Jabalia yesterday evening. Staff Sergeant Lior Steinberg, Staff Sergeant Ofek Barhana, and Staff Sergeant Omer Van Gelder. The FBI said it is investigating the attack on a pro-Israel event in Boulder, Colorado, and considering it terror. Luke is going to fill us in on what is happening on the ground in terms of the investigation. But first of all, Luke, what can you tell us about the victims in the Boulder, Colorado anti-Semitic attack?
Yeah, so in this attack, the attacker threw 2 Molotov cocktails into a group of marchers for the hostages. There were 12 wounded. They range in age from 52 to 88. 2 were really severely wounded with burn injuries and were airlifted to a hospital. The others were less injured. The most severely injured person is an 88-year-old woman, and the other one who was airlifted is her husband. And another injured person was a Holocaust survivor.
Right. And we're hearing that the attacker, Mohammed Soliman, has been planning this attack for over a year. Before we get into the very fine details of the attack, what can you tell us right now about what we know about Mohammed Soliman?
So Soliman, he's 45 years old. He's from Egypt. He came to the U.S. on a tourist visa in 2022. He applied for asylum soon after. We don't know what happened with the asylum, but he didn't get it, it doesn't look like. Department of Homeland Security said his visa expired in 2023 and he was here illegally.
And we understand that he has 5 children and that he essentially waited to carry out this attack until his daughter graduated from school.
Yeah, so he has 5 kids and a wife who live with him in Colorado Springs. They have cooperated with the investigation. He said he was, planning for a year, waiting for his daughter to graduate. I assume high school because it said his kids were teenagers. He started planning this attack by researching how to make Molotov cocktails on YouTube and made them at home, did some other research. He researched where this group would be meeting and found the time and location where they would be meeting. He drove from Colorado Springs to Boulder, which is about 2 hours, stopped on the way there to get gas, both for the Molotov cocktails and his homemade flamethrower, and then arrived at the event and did the attack.
Tell us a little bit about the attack. This is a weekly event, is it not, in support of the hostages?
Yeah, it's a weekly event. It's a group called Run for Their Lives. They hold weekly events around the US for the hostages where people run or march to raise awareness. So in this event, I spoke to one of the organizers. His name's Omer Shachar. He's Israeli. He said it was a normal, peaceful march. They were walking through the middle of Boulder with Israeli flags and pictures of the hostages. And all of a sudden, Soliman emerged, threw two Molotov cocktails into the crowd. They lit on fire. After that, there's video that a lot of people have probably seen. So Shachar said he Soliman had a makeshift flamethrower made from one of those backpack devices that spray chemicals on weeds. So he filled that with gasoline to try to turn it into a flamethrower. It caught on fire itself. He took that off and his shirt, which was on fire. So that's why he's shirtless in the videos. Um, he had 16 unlit Molotov cocktails on him. He only threw two, so it's unclear why he didn't throw the rest still. But yeah, he was arrested at the scene. You can see in video, police kind of approach him and he just lies down and lets them arrest him. And yeah, then he was taken in after that.
Eyewitnesses at the scene, and among those injured, we hear reports of ropes of fire. What can you tell us about the actual attack? What happened there?
So they were marching. Two Molotov cocktails landed in the middle of this group. There was elderly people in it. There was children. Shachar, the organizer, told me immediately he saw the 88-year-old woman. He said flames were all over her from top to bottom. You can see in the videos people are pouring water on her while Solomon's kind of off to the side screaming. So it's just a real moment of terror when it happened.
And in terms of the motivation for attack, we have footage of Soliman screaming, "End Zionists, free Palestine," things of that nature. What do you know about this?
Yeah, so he shouted this stuff at the attack, and then after the attack, when he spoke to the FBI, he told them he did it because the quote Zionists are stealing our land in Palestine. So he pretty explicitly said this was due to the war. And when police found his vehicle near the scene, they found papers in it which were written stuff about Israel and Palestine. And I'll say that security officials have repeatedly said to not jump to conclusions, including Jewish security officials, because the investigation hasn't taken place yet. But it's clear he was motivated by the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
We've heard briefings of the FBI, or at least the investigation. What can you tell us what's happening so far?
So he's being held in Boulder County Jail. There's a big federal team. I think they said 30 FBI agents on the ground. They're checking security cameras in the area, license plate scanners to try to build the timeline of his movements. He appeared in court today very briefly. He had on an orange jumpsuit. He was a little wounded in the attack. He had a bandage around his head, bruising on his face. Didn't say anything in court. So he's being held now on a $10 million cash only bond. He's facing life in prison, charged with federal and state charges, federal charges for terrorism, state charges for many counts of attempted murder and other charges, and is facing life in prison.
What are you hearing from the Boulder Jewish community? How large of a community is it to begin with?
I don't think it's too large. They haven't said too much. They've put out a few statements. Like I talked to the hostages group. I've talked to other Run for Their Lives people. One thing they told me is that there's, for example, a Boulder Jewish Community Festival scheduled for this weekend. So they're working on security. Police are working with them. They have said they will keep doing the hostage marches. The organizer said we're rain or sun or shine, we're going to be there until the hostages are back. So there's definitely security concerns, but they've said they want to continue with the hostages marches and other public events.
Okay, we're going to go to a short break and then discuss security concerns among the Jewish community when we're back.
What surprised you the most discovering about Jewish life in the United States?
I think it's the pride. I think I was envy of that pride. Just being proud, being a proud Jew. It's something that I never even contemplated. I was just an Israeli. I think the fact that, in Israel, we have all sort of sectors in society. You kind of grow up with your kind. I hate that. The fact that I don't know a lot about my Jewish life, and I need to go abroad just to understand that. It's something so messed up, and how we grew up here. It's just, I think, once it got political to be Jewish in Israel, it made me kind of push away from that. Once I got to LA, once I got just being with my daughters abroad, just understanding what we are, my heritage, where we come from, our story, our values. It took me a long time. It took me a long time to get there.
And we're back. This attack is the second within 2 weeks. Of course, the previous lethal attack took place in Washington, D.C. on May 21st, in which 2 young people were killed, Yaron Lischinsky and Sarah Milgrim, and they were both, of course, employees of the Israeli embassy, though targeted for being Jews at this event at the Capitol Jewish Museum. At the time, Luke, you were on the ground following the attack, and you heard very chilling and very prophetic reports from Jewish community leaders who were warning of the possibility of copycat attacks after this DC attack 2 weeks ago. So, Luke, first of all, tell us what the Jewish leadership in Washington, D.C. said at the time about the concern for copycat attacks.
So I spoke to Jewish community security officials. Not all of them are in D.C. It's part of a national network. Some of them are in D.C. But their initial reaction was, our main concern now is this is going to inspire further violence. It happens time and time again. Like one example they used is the Columbine shooting in 1999, which has continued inspiring shootings until today. Another example is the wave of terrorism in Israel in 2015 and 2016, where there was just this massive wave of stabbing attacks. And it kind of, people see violence and it inspires them to do further violence, even if the attacks don't look the same or carried out in the same way. Like I asked them, would a copycat attack be shooting people also when they leave an event? And they said, no, it's just this general inspiration to do violence. So that's been their big concern.
Of course, in the case of the Boulder attack, we hear that Mohammed Soliman has been planning it for up to a year. So I suppose the copycat aspect of it is just the timing of the attack. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, I wouldn't consider this a copycat attack because he's been planning it a long time.
Right. Okay. And so drilling down into the security concerns of the Jewish community, of course, there are efforts always to secure Jewish community events, which is different, I have to say, than when I lived in the United States. When I moved in 1999, there were no overt security guards guarding all sorts of Jewish community events, at least not that I could see. Luke, tell me more about that. But now it is pretty much commonplace to see at least police officers or guards at synagogues at all times. But that's just not enough. We're seeing it's just not enough. So what are the efforts that are being stepped up, Luke?
So there's this whole array of Jewish community security organizations and efforts that really took off with the Tree of Life shooting in 2018. It's everything from people training Krav Maga to people at intelligence desks. So there's a bunch of organizations that do different things, and they all work together and overlap, even if they do different things. So, for example, the ADL does research, like compiles reports and data, and does advocacy. There's the Community Security Initiative and SCN, which are intelligence desks, and then there's the Community Security Service, CSS, a lot of acronyms here, and they train synagogue guards and people to protect events. And this is on top of federal grants, which are also a big deal. So synagogues and other Jewish institutions can apply for federal grants that get them stuff like reinforced doors and security cameras. So there's this whole array of measures that people need to take now. But as we saw recently, it hasn't been enough.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, remembering back to the 2018 Tree of Life synagogue shooting where 11 people were murdered, if I'm not mistaken, that synagogue, which held 3 different communities in one building, had actually gone through some of the federal training. And so that, in a way, made the victim count even lower than it could have been. But of course, this isn't stopping the perpetrators before they arrive at the building itself. So what do you know about cooperative efforts between, I don't know, the FBI and the Jewish security teams?
Yeah, they coordinate pretty closely with law enforcement. A lot of the staff at these organizations are former law enforcement from police and FBI. After they retire, they work for these organizations, so they coordinate very closely. And you see examples of it pretty often. For example, a couple of months ago, a guy was driving across the U.S. and making threats against Jewish people. He said, "I'm going to run over some people at a synagogue in New York City." CSI, the Jewish security group, picked up the threats online through its intelligence desk. They told the NYPD about it. NYPD was talking to, I believe, federal authorities and other police. And then the Port Authority Police, which is based in New York, arrested the guy in New Jersey as he was coming into Manhattan. So you can see in this example, there's this good cooperation between both Jewish community security groups and different law enforcement agencies.
Okay, you recently went out to a base where Jewish security teams are being trained. We're not allowed to divulge exactly where it was, but it's in New York in some area outside of the city. So tell us about this particular effort.
Yeah, so this is CSS, the Community Security Service, which I mentioned. So they train volunteer synagogue security guards. It's a group that started in 2007. It's modeled on groups that do the same thing in Europe, where there's been more of a security threat for a long time. So they kind of developed these methods of training volunteers. And they have thousands of volunteers around the U.S. They protect synagogues. And their position on it is members of the community can protect it better in some ways because, for example, they know if somebody isn't a member of the community and they can pick them out better than law enforcement could. They know the community's behaviors. Like they can say, oh, this person, Jewish person, wouldn't be, doing this on this holiday, so they look suspicious. So it's this system for training guards in everything from Krav Maga and counter surveillance to questioning and intelligence to protect their communities.
Right. And today is, of course, still the Jewish holiday of Shavuot across the diaspora. And I imagine that the communities are really concerned following the attack on Sunday. They, of course, knew about it before the holiday began. And I just really wonder, are you feeling any kind of apprehension in the air? You're based in New York. What are you feeling just on the ground in terms of the Jewish community right now and their feelings of safety?
There's apprehension, yes. I don't think it's overwhelming. There's been these attacks before. People got through it. Like in New York, I also spoke to the hostages group in New York today, and they kind of said, we're worried. We're going to have increased security. We're going to work more with the police to keep us safe. This is a group that holds rallies in Central Park every day or every Sunday. And they said, we're worried. We're going to take extra steps, but we're going to continue doing our rallies and living our life. So I think that's been the view in Jewish communities for a long time. And I think that's going to continue.
That the community is resilient in building itself for future events, not cowering in a corner. That sounds pretty on brand for the Jewish people to me, Luke.
Yeah.
All right, Luke, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Times of Israel's Daily Briefing. Please check out another installment tomorrow. This episode was produced by the Podwaves and video edited by Thomas Gersh. If you have any comments or questions about this or any other episode, please drop us an email to podcast@timesofisrael.com. Until tomorrow, shalom.